So I can, if I bring my shadow point in, I can actually see better where the histogram starts. So I can bring my black point to just before it starts there. In this particular case, though, we have a lot of shadow detail that's real muddy and dark, so you got to be really careful about going in too far with this point. A lot of the adjustments in this image will need more localized adjustments instead of global adjustments. I'm going to try to see what I can do globally to get it a little bit better. It's probably not going to be much.
And what are you doing right now?
Right now I'm just trying to keep contrast and brighten it just a little bit. I can turn this off and on. Another thing about color correction too is that everybody sees color slightly different.
Yeah.
Everybody's eyes are different. Day to day, one person will see it different. In the beginning of the day, you'll see color slightly different than you see it at the end of the day. So there's this constant shift in perception of color. And to make matters worse, monitors will display color differently throughout the day and day to day. And printers will print color differently from day to day. So what you try to do is you try to neutralize your environment as much as possible. You calibrate your monitors to get them as close as possible to like a neutral ground. Whenever you can, you read color values throughout an image to get a real idea of what they're supposed to be, and I'll go over that a little bit more later. But realize that sometimes when you correct an image, it's good to leave it, especially if it's going to be used large and it's a big beauty image or something. You want to color correct it, leave it for at least a few hours, maybe the next day, come back to it and reevaluate the image. If you have the time, if it's an important enough image, you want to do that, because again, your perception will change. Sometimes when color correcting also, you have this mental image of what the image looked like in the beginning, and you have this idea of what your goal is for the image, and a lot of times you kind of go too far past that goal, and when you close the image, open it up later, you look at it like, whoa, that was way too much, I should have backed off of it. And it's just the natural process of color correcting. So now this is actually too bright, so I'm going to bring that down. And there's always a lot of going back and forth and just kind of constantly evaluating whether this adjustment makes it better or worse. I feel it's really weakening the highlights or the lighter areas of the image. So I don't think I'm gonna toss this one. With this particular image, there's just I don't think we can really do too many more global corrections. We're going to really have to isolate certain areas and work on them individually. So we're going to start with localized corrections. And so to decide where you start with localized corrections, it really doesn't matter. So in this case, I'm going to start with the water. We do have this kind of low light feeling to the image, which you have to decide whether you want to enhance that look. And for instance, in the water still has a lot of red in it, so you got to decide, do you want to bring some more blue and cyan into the water to make it look more like water, or do you want to keep a lot of that kind of sunset look to it? First step though is to create a new group, and we're going to do a select color range. Actually, before we do select color range, we want to make just a rough selection around the water. Okay, and then we'll do select color range.
Did you make that rough selection so it wouldn't pick up on like the clouds or something?
Right, exactly.
Okay.
When you make a selection first, it isolates the color range to only affect those areas.
Huh.
So it's a good way to start off with creating selections. And if you want more information about masks and creating selections, there was a class we did in the beginning of the training sessions that cover selections and masks. Okay, the fuzziness here, we're going to basically just tweak it to where you get as much selected, at least the edges, because you can always paint in if something's not being picked up in the center of what you want selected, but you want to make sure at least your edges are decent. So you want to try to pick up not too much of anything else, but just the edges of what you want selected. That's probably as close as I'm going to get, so I'm going to hit OK. Now that I have a selection, I'm going to make a mask for the group, so just add a mask. If you want to see your mask, you just alt-click on the mask, and it will show you what your mask looks like. Or I just alt-clicked on it again to see the image. Or you could just hit the backslash key, and it'll basically show your mask as an overlay on top of the image. And this is probably the most useful way to do it, because then you can fix your mask and see what areas are being over-selected and under-selected, and you can tweak it here. So with that, I'm going to go to my brush palette. Okay, take shape off.
Is that quick mask? The
It's
backslash? Is that what quick mask
no.
is?
Well, it's not quick mask, because it's quick mask is for selections. It's basically just overlaying the channel
Oh, okay.
on top. It has nothing to do with selections. They're two separate things. So I'm going to just kind of clean up the skyline a little bit, and I'm just holding the shift key and just clicking between 2 points, and it'll make a straight line there. And I'll just kind of brush this in real quick.
And what are you doing? When you're filling that in?
Right now, I'm working on the mask. I'm just basically cleaning up the mask. I'm painting this. This is the mask right here.
So you're excluding those areas from
Correct.
the selection.
Right.
Okay.
Yep. So I'm going to hit the backslash key again to remove the overlay. Now I have the water selected. The reason why I put it in a group, because I don't know how many adjustments I'm going to need to fix this. I'll probably use curves, I might use color balance also, and I might use 2 or 3 different adjustments. And the idea of putting the mask on a group is that you have one mask that works for all the elements in that group, instead of having like 3 different masks. And that's beneficial, because if I have to edit my mask, I only have to edit it once. I don't have to, instead of editing that mask 3 times, and then having all these 3 masks be slightly different, and it's just a pain in the butt. You just want to have one mask to work for all those adjustments. So I'm going to start with curves. You can see the water is pretty flat. There's not really a lot going on there. So I'm going to increase the contrast. And basically, to increase the contrast, if you're using curves, you want to create what's called an S-curve. And an S-curve, basically, you just make one point that's lower and one point that's higher. It creates like a slight S, and that'll increase the contrast in the image. Inversely, if you go do it like reverse S by making the shadows go up and the highlights go down, that'll flatten the image even more, which we do not want. So I'm going to go back to the S-curve.